I'm so excited for you to hear today's episode with Jeanne Marie. She's coming back, this time not as a birth and postpartum doula, but as a Montessori mentor and everything Montessori. She's a fantastic human being. And I'm going to read a little bit from her bio because I think it captures her way better than I could talking. She is a Montessori home and school consultant. She's the host of the Art of Parenting podcast, which I will link in the show notes, as well as a special PDF that you can download on how to create in the nursery Montessori environment for your baby. She's also the founder of Your Parenting Mentor, which she does consultations, and she has many passions: Montessori, RIE, conscious parenting, positive discipline, and mindfulness. And she wraps all those up with what she does. I have known Jeanne Marie for 15 plus years, and what she's offered to my parents has been so critical in helping them create the environment that their kids need to survive and thrive. And I'm excited for this episode for you to hear it. Let's get started. Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. Welcome. I'm so glad you're back.
I'm so happy to be back. I love having conversations with you.
And it's fun to talk to a fellow podcaster, which you have way more experience than I do. But yeah, and everything will be linked in the show notes because I want you guys to follow that. And oh my gosh, you're going to learn so much as new parents. It is a phenomenal podcast with a ton of experts. You're doing an awesome job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I want to start off. I said in the intro that I've known you for 15 years. You were my first introduction to Montessori. I'd heard about it, but I didn't understand the depth of it until you started giving like talks around town and at the center to explain what it really is. And I wish I'd known earlier before when I had Angie, because she came at 5 and it was like all the early stuff. I thought I'm too late and I just didn't know.
Yeah.
So I want our listeners to kind of understand what Montessori is and why it's so rich and so needed in our communities. So can you start with that?
Sure, I would love to. So Montessori is, first and foremost, it is a proper name. It is Dr. Maria Montessori, who was one of the first women allowed to be a doctor in Italy more than 100 years ago. And she really focused on children and understanding human development, because before her discoveries, children were just kind of put to the side, and we have to fill them up with knowledge, and they came to us kind of, inert, unintelligent, whatever. And she kind of really changed the whole perspective of how to view children and the importance of their brain, especially those first 6 years of life, that they have like this immense potential that we need to nurture and to guide. And so from all of her discoveries, there is an educational method that most people know as Montessori, but I think most people just know it as it's preschool. And like you, 5, oh no, it's too late. Well, not at all. Montessori really, for me, starts at conception. And, we have a training, an in-depth training called Assistance to Infancy, which really we start with prenatal life through the first 3 years. And then we have other trainings for 3 to 6 and so forth. So it goes from actually conception to adolescence. There is a whole slew of information for human development from the time of prenatal life through adolescence, thanks to Dr. Maria Montessori and her son, Mario Montessori, and some of her collaborators, Dr. Montanaro, who I will mention later on because she was very important for that first period, the birth to 3 years.
I think the reason I was so attracted to it is because there's that brain development part, but it also moves into a kind of a soul part. And where we're starting at conception and moving through that prenatal period inside the womb matters just as much as the outside, as much as the birth, as much as all of that. And when you can start early, even before you're pregnant, exploring it, Instagram has made it so accessible to see videos of little teeny kids starting their journey with it and then where they are in 2 years, and it's mind-blowing.
It is mind blowing. And what is to me so beautiful about it, it's really about understanding human development, and that if we let it be and we observe it and we nurture it, children are capable of such amazing things, right? I think where we get in trouble is where we want to control things, where we want to sit a child before they're ready to sit, and so forth. And so here it's really about understanding this universal timeline that all humans have, and that if we know a little bit ahead of the game, we can be there for them and encourage them and nurture and really guide them. Because actually, in the Montessori classroom, so I was in the Montessori classroom for many years. We don't call ourselves teachers; we are just guides. We set up the environment for their developmental window, and then we guide them along, knowing and trusting. Trust, I think, is a really big one. Trusting that this is human development, and that they're going to get through all of these different milestones on their own with great joy and so forth. So,
It is, it's
very
such a
important. Yeah,
supportive, yeah, it's very supportive and loving and eye-opening just to watch it, and I think it's a relearning and letting go and surrender for adults because we are
completely.
so perfectionist, and so this is how it's done, and this is no, and don't do that mess, and whatever, preconceived notions we have because that's how we were raised, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a
And
beautiful.
I think it's true, because before Dr. Montessori, children were to be seen and not heard, and kind of put aside, and those who could afford had nannies or whatever, or children were helping us do work, but we never really paid attention to that immense development that's going on. And one of the things that she's coined and that we now use is the notion of the absorbent mind, which is, we say children are just like sponges. And that is that absorbent mind, which is that brain for the first 6 years of life. The first 3 years of life, it is absorbing unconsciously. And then three and on, it is starting to be a conscious learner where it knows what it wants and so forth. But before, it's just taking in everything, the good, the bad, the evil, everything,
Everything.
everything, everything. So mind your language, parents. But
That's where I would have failed right there. Mhm. Yep, which is why we have some of the
yeah,
funniest TikTok videos on the planet because of what those kids are saying.
exactly,
Well, and
exactly.
will you cover what the first 6 crucial years of life are and how that relates to birth and postpartum?
Wow. So that's a big one,
Yeah,
right?
big
Because that,
question.
like I said, the first 6 years is that absorbent mind where they are really learning about their environment, about themselves, and so forth. But we can cut that up in smaller chunks. And so let's start prenatally. We know we are expecting a child. That is their first environment, right? And we know how important the child's environment is and will be. So let's nurture that environment, right? Let's try as much as possible to limit the stress that we have in our lives. Let's nourish our body well. Let's, exercise and so forth, because this is their first environment. So we want to give it loving kindness to ourselves, to the child, and also accept. Like, I think that's a big one too, is accepting that we are carrying a child. Sometimes it's an unexpected pregnancy and so forth. If we choose to carry through, let's embrace it and give this unborn child as much love as possible, right? And seek support if that's troubling you, right?
And if you're in that pregnancy window, say, I didn't know I was supposed to prepare beforehand. Now I'm pregnant. I heard about Montessori. Are there books or, yeah, obviously your podcast to start listening to? But what would you suggest they do to spend some quality time bonding with baby and learning about Montessori during that pregnancy window?
So there's a beautiful book that a girlfriend of mine wrote very recently called The Montessori Baby. And it's Simone Davis and Junifa. They take you through really all of the steps, which is wonderful. There's also, I think it's out of print, which was the Dr. Montessori wrote is Understanding the Human Being. Wonderful book. And then all of Dr. Montessori's books are wonderful. We have to remember that these were always lectures that were given in Italian. And so sometimes the language is like, what? But The Absorbent Mind is great. The Secret of Childhood is wonderful. So there's a lot of information out there.
What a
There's
great
some
title, The Secret of Childhood,
yeah,
because I feel
because
like
that is what she did. She uncovered for us the secret of this human being that had so much potential. And I don't remember the word specifically of the quote, but it's really about how we need to respect the child just because of that immense potential that they have, right? And that we need to almost revere it. So yeah, it is a beautiful secret. So when we uncover it and the secret of language and so forth. So to go back to your question about, those crucial first 6 years, which are very crucial because there are a lot of things that are going to be put in place during that time. So prenatal, their first environment, let's take good care of ourselves because we are we are that first environment. Then there's the birth environment. Very important for mother and baby, right? How are we welcoming this human being? What is their environment? And there's been a lot of beautiful work that has been done over the years to make sure that we are welcoming babies in a serene, peaceful environment, not as bright lights, because before it was bright lights holding them upside down, swatting their butts, and none of that, at least not in the births that I attend. So
right.
that is very important. And that to me takes preparation on the part of the parents. And if there is a birthing partner, and that's a lot of the work that I do with my private clients, is like we really prepare our minds, our souls, our bodies to welcome this newborn. And then it's going to be the first 8 weeks to me are crucial for the whole attachment and securing. And we call it the symbiosis period, meaning that mother needs baby to get her hormones going, to have those maternal instincts, to her milk come in, all this. She needs to be smelling that newborn. She needs them close to her. And the newborn needs to have that skin to skin and to hear the heartbeat that they've been hearing for 9 months,
There's
to
still
feel
one person.
secure.
Mhm.
Exactly. To feel secure, to know, oh, I've been born in a safe place. I'm going to thrive, right? Because unfortunately, we know that babies who are separated and deprived from attention, they kind of wither. And we've seen brain scans now to prove all of this, that their brain shrinks as opposed to thriving. So that to me is one of the first very important thing, is this trust in the world that we give this infant, that they have been born in a safe place, that we're here to take care of them, that we will answer their cries, that we understand them, and such. And that is really those first 8 weeks where, to me, it's all about mom resting, feeding her baby, making sure she has a team that is caring for her. We need to mother the mothers.
Which we do
Uh,
not do, nor do we talk about it enough, and they prepare
so
for the birth
important.
and the labor and nothing for postpartum, and they are caught.
Yeah, yeah. And it is so, so hard. It's a very hard transition, this whole becoming a parent, becoming a mother. It's a huge transition spiritually, hormonally, physically, intellectually, everything. And yeah, like you say, we don't pay enough attention to that. And I think that that's where we're missing the mark for really supporting mothers so that they can bond well with their infants. And we know today that that secure attachment is the foundation for the rest of their lives.
I think if families had more information about that before pregnancy even began, so they could get on the same page and understand that postpartum time, especially the first 8 to 15 weeks, is so critical for her to recover so that she can be better for the baby and build that connection no matter how the birth went. Obviously, we want it to go well, but it is so important for her to understand that she's literally walking away from an old life, creating a whole new identity, and stepping into a role that she's never done before. So parenting classes should come before that. Studying Montessori, brain development should come before that. And we just don't think about it.
We don't think about it, and it's interesting because I think there is something in the pregnant brain that is, I've got to pay attention to birthing. Because I actually remember you were saying we've known each other for 15 years. I remember coming into one of your hypnobirthing class and talking to these parents about setting up the environment and your home and all that. And they all looked at me like,
Blank stares.
like, and I remember actually, now it's coming back. I actually remember a dad saying, "Are we going to have to move?" And I was like, "No." So it's very interesting to me how there's really this sensitive period for, it's almost like you should read that book even before getting pregnant, right?
100%. Yes.
Like when you're trying to conceive, start reading parenting books, because when you are pregnant, especially towards the end, you're just so focused on the birth that you don't think about the rest of your life, because you're going to be a parent for the rest of your life and you're probably going to have this human around for the next 20 years. So let's get ready to not only birth but to be a parent. Oh, I mean, you're singing to the choir because I've been trying
I know.
to,
We
you
both have been
know.
going, "How do we get them to take that seriously?" I don't understand why you can't, and it is the
Yeah.
brain is so overwhelmed with getting the fundamentals done and who's gonna go back to work and how are we like, I understand all of that, but if we could plan for the postpartum part before we're pregnant, and then during the first 3 months when we don't feel so hot, can we plan on how do we set up our postpartum with the right care, the right food, the right environment? Because that middle part is really, are we gonna move? Because sometimes they're in a one-bedroom apartment, right? And how are we gonna do work and all that stuff? It does get crammed with that first 3 months when you're kinda not feeling that great. Good time to prepare for postpartum because by the end, you're in birth classes, you're in a breastfeeding class, you're hopefully in all of those things and pregnancy's going well. So, yeah, I don't know. I am preaching to the choir because
Yeah, but I mean, I would like to put something out there for those who are thinking of starting a family. Maybe you haven't even met your partner, maybe you haven't gotten married yet. Save your money. Like, don't do a big blowout wedding. Save that money for a birth doula, for postpartum doula, for your care team to recover after birth. Like, that is way more important. And, maybe
in a
have a party.
$50,000 wedding.
Exactly. Have a party afterwards once you've had the child. But, like, to me, having the child is such a big commitment that for me, like, the funds should go to that so that you can, maybe even have a home birth, which I think is the best way to go if you're healthy and you can afford it. I think it is really, to me, the best way to have a natural physiological birth is not in a hospital, but either in a birthing center or at home. And at home, you can just stay in your bed. You don't have to leave a few hours later. So, like, the priorities in our society sometimes are a little skewed. So
Well, and
that
wise
was
advice.
my soapbox.
Yeah, absolutely wise advice because we do spend a lot on one day and that baby could be coming in 9 months. And you're like, "Oh, I'm still in debt from that." And I know I've had parents say that, like, everything is a stretch because we are so in debt from the wedding. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I
So
get
yeah,
it.
but so back to the whole kind of sequence. So those first 8 week, the symbiosis, very important, and it's really this time to get to know baby, the birth partner or the parenting partner. I really want them to protect that bonding time. Like it's a very important. They will create their own rituals and kind of time with the baby, but to really protect that bonding, breastfeeding, skin to skin time that mommy and baby are having. And then it's really about setting up the environment so that we can follow this very natural development, right? Of having an environment that is conducive to the child's natural development. And so, to give an example of that, is modern day nurseries, we're going to get a crib. We're going to get this box with rails to put our infant in. If you think about it, the infant can not get in there by themselves and they can't get themselves out of there, right? So in Montessori, when we set up the nursery environment or the sleeping area, we actually use a bed on the floor. So it's really a mattress on the floor or a mattress. There's now kind of trending Montessori bed. So it's a nice little wooden frame, but it's close to the ground and the child can get in and out by themselves. So we really try as much as possible to not have containers that we're putting our children in that they can't get themselves in and out of on their own independently, right? Because movement, the development of movement, so both fine motor, so the hands and the equilibrium, getting up on 2 feet and walking takes time, takes that whole first 12 months, right? Or sometimes a little less, sometimes a little bit more. But when you think of it, they're going through all of human evolution, right? They were a fish prenatally, then they're like a slithering reptiles, then they get on all fours, then they start reaching like primates, and then suddenly they're standing like humans. But all of that is a natural process that we need to let the child discover on their own. We need to trust the process, trust that they are going to roll over and sit up and crawl and stand up and so forth on their own. To do that, we do have an environment that is conducive to that, right? So the floor bed, a simple mat on the floor. I like to put a mirror that is on the ground next to the mat so that they can see themselves and they're fascinated by this human they're
Their new
seeing.
friend.
Their new friend. They don't know that it's them yet. Like they don't have that intellectual understanding, but they're fascinated, and it gives them information about their body scheme and so forth. And then later on, when they are like those primates and they're sitting and they start reaching for things, we can put a little coordination bar or make sure that there's furniture that they can pull up on, because once they pull up, they're just this look on their face. They're so proud that they finally are doing things like we do, right? And all of that is very natural, and it's really, to me, it's about creating that home where this human being that has very different needs than ours will be able to develop naturally at their own pace.
Would you say that Montessori is more environment based than milestone based? Like creating an environment for the baby to just explore and become who they're meant to be rather than it's 5 months, they should be doing XYZ? Or is it kind of a blend of both of that?
There's definitely somewhat of a universal guideline, because we know that around 4 or 5 months the child's going to roll over most, and before that they've discovered their hands, they're starting to babble, things like that. So there is this understanding of what the universal timeline is, but the environment is set up to encourage and to support and to nurture these milestones that we know are coming, right? And so that's why we don't want to put them in an exerciser or a container that is standing them up before they're ready, things like that. We are really wanting them to develop on their own. And it's really, to me, that the key thing for any parent and person who works with children is this understanding that we are scientific observers. We are observing the child and we are helping them get to the next stage. We're not doing it for them. We're just observing, right? Even, I'll see a child who's not yet crawling, who's maybe trying to reach for a toy. It's really hard because they don't have the coordination of movement yet, but they have this intention. Let them struggle, let them figure it out. That is what human development is, right? Don't like, oh, do you want this and put it in their hand? Like, let them have that struggle. Of course, you don't want them to get upset about it, but a healthy struggle is healthy, it's good. So it's about creating that environment that gives them permission to have all of these natural movements. So it's milestone, but it's the environment that helps them get there and your observation of it.
Our environment is how we thrive, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's who we set ourselves up with, what is available to use for us and what input we're putting in. That's how we survive and thrive. So not survive. That's how we thrive. So it makes perfect sense of what we want to expose our baby to or not expose our baby to.
So yes, so the environment also, I will say, is very simple. Like, we don't want to overwhelm our
I
babies
think
and our
that's what
young children.
I loved about when you worked with my parents and they came in going, "There's nothing in there. It's so clean. I thought I had to buy all this stuff. There's no plastic. It's just not a messy baby room that I thought it was gonna be. There's a few books," and they appreciated that it was gonna grow with their child and that it wasn't overwhelming, and I thought that's so brilliant.
Yes, because, children, when they're born, they don't need much. They need our arms and food, and that's it, right? A place to sleep and
Heartbeat, cuddling.
heartbeat, exactly. And then, as they grow, they need space to explore and a few toys, but honestly, toys can be pots and pans. I mean, it doesn't, you know,
Tupperware wooden spoons. I mean, that's what we
uh,
played with. That's all my nieces and nephews played
exactly.
with.
No battery operated noise making contraptions. Those are just a total distraction to their concentration. They are here to learn, to explore, to observe. They're observing their world. Put them on a blanket under a tree. Like, what a beautiful mobile. You don't need to get all sorts of things. There is, in the Montessori, like there is like a sequence, for example, of mobiles, but they're very simple. They're not battery operated. They move with the air currents in the room. We start with black and white, then the primary colors, then gradations of colors, then forms, things like that, because the visual sense is still developing after birth. Auditory sense is also developing. So, soft noises and things like that. But it's really about a very simple, minimalist environment because we have to remember that external order, so what we see, gives internal order. So, especially a brand new child who has that absorbent mind that's clear and clean, let's give it some structure and simple so they can start classifying things, right? A child who has way too many toys, colors, and things, it's overwhelming for their brain. And oftentimes it's a child that's going to be a little bit in distress. So, calming things. And it's true when you say, our environments, we thrive. Like, I know for me, having a kitchen where I know where everything is, where everything is at arm's reach, all that is super important. So we need to do the same thing for the child.
Well, and how do we, because I know we talk about this in birth class, how are we checking in? How are we connecting with our babies? How do you attune to babies during that first 18 months?
So, through what I was saying about observation, really understanding, observing, starting to understand what their different cries are. I'm hungry, I'm wet, I'm bored, I just want cuddles. Like, you start to be attuned, but I think that is really important to be with the child, right? To be able to understand that, to really tune in to your instincts, trusting yourself too, and trusting that your child is going to communicate with you, because today I feel like we're very dependent on a lot of gadgets where we're watching our baby sleep on our iPhone, or we've got this thing that's going to tell us when to go get them and whatever. Like,
7
try to tune
apps.
in. Exactly. Try to tune in. Like, parents have been doing this for centuries without all of these gadgets. And I think we've turned out okay. So let's continue tuning into to that instinct and really observing, like really learning to observe our child and ourselves too. Because when I say observation, we're observing the child, what they're doing, what they're looking at, and without judgment, without comparing them, without preconceived ideas, really being scientific, clean slate, like, oh, she's looking at her right hand. That's it. Right. That's, or whatever. Or she's, making that cry or whatever. And also observing yourself. Like, what is it making you feel? Like, are you annoyed that she's hungry again? Are you, you know, things like that? Like, to me, that's important. And then also observing the environment. Is there an obstacle in the environment that's not giving them the space to explore? Or, maybe we're noticing that when the bright lights are on, they get a little jolted or whatever. So we're also tuning into the environment that we're creating for them. So, like I said, observation is so key.
I appreciate that it's one baby at a time. It's what is right in front of me, this creature, this being, what are they feeling, sensing, doing, instead of it's a 6-month-old, they should be blah, 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 should be da, 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 da. There's a
Nope.
list, but actually looking at your child, it's different than the one at the playground. It's just, they're different
It's
families,
different than
different
another
filters.
child that you had.
Absolutely. Yeah, different than their sibling. Absolutely. And I love that it's be present with this child in this moment. What are their needs and wants? I
And what are
feel,
your needs and wants?
yeah, it goes both
You're
ways.
different each and every day, right? So being in tune to that as well, and being able to voice it to, hopefully there is a parenting partner, or you have friends or family, because parenting was never meant to be done alone. So, single parents have it hard, and I hope if there are any listening to please seek support, because
Oh,
it's
you
it's
can't do it
important to
alone.
do so. No.
You cannot. I have been a single parent for 15 years. Could not do it alone.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to have others. And I
Yeah.
feel like when you're parenting in this direction, I would feel seen and heard and respected and validated, whether I was happy, sad, angry, whatever. And I think sometimes gentle parenting, Montessori, everything kind of gets lumped into one. Oh, it's so no rule bound and they just do whatever they want and there's no one spanking and or whatever it is that are preconceived notions. Because what I'm seeing when my parents that have come through my classes are using these methods and tools, the connection is so deep and they're so aware of what's going on with their babies and their toddlers and their kids as they're moving into adolescence, and they are more confident. They are better learners. They have different life skills. It's just a totally different kind of parenting, and I have absolutely loved watching it and being an observer of it. Kind of jealous sometimes, but it's been a beautiful thing to watch.
And I think the beauty of that too is that we are involving our children in our lives, right? I feel that many parents have this tendency to think that I need to be entertaining my child. But bringing them in and having them in a carrier while you do dishes, you are entertaining. Like, that is
Yep, and
amazing,
everything else,
right?
they're looking out the window, they're seeing birds, they're watching bubbles.
Exactly. And talk to them. Let them, see what they're seeing, rediscover. Like you said at the beginning, it's like it's permission for us to rediscover the feeling of the wind blowing in our face, or whatever. Like, we get to rediscover everything through their eyes, through their senses. But it's why I say involve them is especially when they become toddlers. So that whole environment, at first they're using their hands to move around, and when they get up on 2 feet, they have their hands which Montessori called the tools of intelligence,
Oh,
right?
that's beautiful.
Isn't it? Because
Wow.
these fine motor, like, what are you gonna do with your hands? Are you gonna be a pianist? Are you gonna be a surgeon? Are you gonna be a gardener? Like, our hands are everything, right? And so once they stand up, they want to be doing things with their hands, and we need to give them intelligent, purposeful work and activities. And that's where oftentimes parents are saying, I can't get anything done because my child just wants to be with me. I say, yes, they do, because they want to be doing what you're doing. So do it with them, invite them in. You're cooking, cook with them. You're cleaning, clean with them. You're gardening, and it's not like give them an iPad and keep them busy. No, involve them in what you're doing. And that's where that attunement, that connection is happening, because eventually they're going to be able to do all of those things on their own.
And they're
And
so proud of themselves when they got to peel
exactly,
a carrot strip, and they walk
exactly,
around with that carrot strip showing everybody. Yeah, it's been so
exactly.
fun to watch them cook and get laundry out and, things that you're like, this is going to take me 15 minutes longer, 20 minutes longer. It's going to make a bigger mess. Yep. But someday it won't.
So worth it. So worth it. Like, slow down, go at their pace. And the other thing is they will go on long walks as long as you go at their pace, because you got to stop and look at the snails and look at the ants and smell the flowers, but they are happy to be walking. So
It's so
again,
much
it's
easier
about
to put them in a stroller, right? When
Mhm.
we didn't have strollers, we were either wearing them or they were wandering on the path with us.
Exactly,
Yeah, we've
exactly.
forgotten all that, and they were barefoot,
Very important.
right? Their toes
Very
were touching
important.
things, which
Mm,
is another way of gathering intelligence, and, "Ooh, I should avoid those because those are stickery or those hurt," like, it
yeah.
is, it's learning the environment, and I remember saying to my mom, "I'm bored," and she's like, "You'll find something to do," and she'd walk away, and nowadays, we grab the iPad, right? Or we give them their Wii or their Nintendo or whatever it was. What does Montessori, say to "I'm bored"? That's okay, isn't it, to let them be bored?
That's
Because that's what
wonderful. That's wonderful. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to discover? And honestly, like, children, I mean, the ones that I've cared for, that were either in my classroom or in homes, they're never bored because they're always doing something. Because the beauty to me of the Montessori environment, especially in kind of the school setting, is there's all of these activities that are appropriate for their brain development, right? And the guide has shown them how to use it. And so they have an array of choices of things that they know intrinsically that they want to master this, whether it's making a bow or peeling a carrot or whatever. Like, there's something that's calling them to master this skill. And so, because in Montessori, it is this freedom of choice, they choose the activity they want to work with. They are super focused and concentrated. And when they're done, they clean up, they put it away, and they go choose something else. Or they go sit and observe a friend doing another work, right? So, they're never bored because they're never being told what to do, right? And I will preface that with saying that, in the environment, because you said earlier, it's this kind of free for all method. Not at all. It is freedom within limits.
Yeah, there are definitely boundaries, but they're loving and they're set with intention. I think that's the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah, very, very, very important to know what your boundaries are. And a child who has no boundary is a child who is completely overwhelmed, because they do not have the intellectual property to make most of the choices or to know what the limits are. So we are their guides as to, these are the limits, but within these limits, you're free to choose what you want to do. Right. So that is, to me, very important. It's not like super strict, but it's not a permissive free for all. It's really that beautiful balance of firmness and kindness, of knowing what your boundaries are, and you're free to do what you want within them.
You know, but that screams that it fosters autonomy,
Completely.
which is what we are
Completely.
lacking, which is
And
which is
and
what we're
and
lacking.
that's yeah, and you were asking about the first 6 years, which we haven't really gotten to, but, like, when you think of it, understanding what the basic needs of the young child is, at least the first 3 years, one of it is independence, is to be able to do things for ourselves. And, you and I, anybody listening to the podcasts, we want to be doing things for ourselves, right? That's what gives us self esteem and worthiness. So the child is the same. And they need love and security, which we talked about, that trust in the world. They need movement. That freedom of movement is why we set up the environment for them to have that freedom of movement. And we make sure that it is safe, but they're exploring safely. And then language, very important. The whole development of language will not happen if we do not give language to our children, right? Children will babble. For example, those first gurgles and babbles are pretty universal sounds. After a while, they will only repeat the sounds that they hear. Those who are deaf will stop babbling. So just to make you understand like how language works, we need to feed language to the brain for it to come out. A child who's not spoken to, where we've got the TV on and we're just, satisfied with listening to whatever or the radio and we're not communicating with our baby, they will have much, much slower language development. So talk to your babies, even in utero. Talk to them, tell them stories, tell them what you're doing when you're feeding them, changing them, everything. When you see them looking at, say, oh, are you looking at the white ceiling or the clouds? Or like give them language, very
Well,
important.
yeah, you're giving them context to what input is coming in, right? Oh, do you hear
Exactly.
that? Do you hear that? That's an airplane. Do you hear that? That's a garbage truck, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
just
Exactly.
everything we can be talking about so that constantly making sense of the world, right?
And sense, as you say, is the way that they learn. They are sensorial learners. Those first 3 years is they're learning through their senses, which is why they put everything in their mouth. Like they're just like, what's this? Right? That's all that they have at the beginning. And then there's smells, there's taste, there's touch, there's what they hear. So they're sensorial learners. And the senses, when you think of it, is the foundation for language. We need to be able to have all those senses to then be able to put words on everything and to communicate all of that. And then the other thing, and I mentioned that in the simplicity, a very important thing for the young child is order, a sense of order. So both in the physical environment and also in your routines, in how you go through your days, right? Your routines or rituals, however you want to call them, but there's something predictable about the day, which really
Safety and boundaries with all of that.
exactly it gives it a real sense of security for the child that they know. And this comes also with the environment. Like when I set up an environment for a new child, we're going to look at the different environments for where we feed the child, where we put the child to sleep, where we're going to care for them, change them, and dress them, and then movement. And this gives them this idea that they know what to expect when they're in that specific place, right? When they're put down on their changing table, they're like, oh, yeah, okay, this is where I get my little massage or my diapers changed. Like it's familiar and it's securing. So having a sense of order is very important for the young child.
Well, and a lot of times we're not in order yet as a parent, right? Especially if we didn't bring that order in with us, it's not inherent. And having to go, oh, wait, they're going to be more secure. They're going to be calmer, which makes us that way. And also, we do better in a sense of order too. We just might not be disciplined at that point yet to do it and bring it in. I think Montessori can really set a family on a beautiful road. But if they've never done anything like that, it takes a little coordination and a little grace to get through, like, oh, that's on me, why I'm so stressed out and why I just yelled. That has nothing to do with them. Now they're reacting to me because I've been an asshole, right? It takes a lot of reorganization. And I've found that even with Finley, because of her special needs, if I'm on high alert because I just have a lot to do or whatever, whew, her reaction to my nervous system. And there's not really communication, but since we read each other probably telepathically and visual and physical more than words, her reactions are always about my nervous system
Right,
and
because
me
she's
being
a sponge. She's a sponge. She's picking up on your stress, your anxiety, and so she's reacting. And this is true with all children. Like, check in. That's why I say observation is also about ourselves. And like I even say to parents who work outside the home, for example, I know I had a mom who would stress because she would come home from work and you enter that door and your second full-time job starts. So take a moment for yourself before you enter the door. Maybe take a walk around the block, listen to a meditation in the car, do something that is going to let you kind of wash the day away. Or I remember, actually, my children were older, but I remember this because I had noticed how annoyed I was when I would get home from work. So I was working with 25 children from the ages to 2.5 to about 5.5, 25 little ones all day long. I would come home and I had my two children that were older who needed help doing homework. And it just drove me bananas because I didn't have the patience. I
no
was
bandwidth.
tired, all this, no bandwidth. So I checked in, I was like, they're getting the raw end of the deal. And I actually had a girlfriend who would be home when they got home, start the homework. When I got home, I got to go take my shower, wash the day away, put on my mommy clothes, and say, what are we going to make for dinner? And have that relationship with them. And that to me is important. Like, so yes, that was big privilege to be able to have a girlfriend who was ready to step in and be able to have that. But like, tune in, like, it was not pretty. And I didn't like who I was being. I didn't like how I was mothering my children. And so I asked for help.
And I mean, after you mothered 25 other kids during the day,
Exactly.
yeah, the second
And you
full-time
were on your
job.
best behavior because they're not yours.
Absolutely, and then you come home and your kids get the bluh of everything. Yeah,
It's not fair.
it's not
Yeah.
fair, and I do
No.
appreciate the taking a step back and how beautiful to have a friend or partner that you guys can say, "Look, I'm at max capacity. How are we gonna do this?" Because it is a finding grace, figuring out what works for your family, and I think that is definitely true in the doula world too, right? We're attending births that may be 3 days long, and then we come home and the house is a mess and this and that, and we just blow. And we're doing that birth after birth, maybe 3 or 4 a month. And our family gets the crap end of the deal, where the other
Yeah.
4 families who supported get the best of you. That's
Right.
not okay either,
No.
and
No.
I've seen many relationships dissolve over that because the passion of doing what you love to do, but your family goes by the wayside. And that
Yeah.
has a
So
long-term
true.
expensive consequence.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
definitely. So let's get back to 6 crucial years. Are we at year 3 yet?
So, yes, those first 6 years, as I had mentioned earlier, is the absorbent mind. It's where the brain is at its highest capacity to learn all sorts of things effortlessly. And Montessori had discovered that there were sensitive periods within that time frame where the child was going to focus all of their energy into learning something specific, whether it be language, whether it be movement, whether it's fine motor or gross motor. You see children classifying things, putting things in a row, like they're very sensitive to order. So those first 6 years have all of those different sensitive periods, has that absorbent mind. The first 3 years is the unconscious absorbent mind, right? They are learning how to get up and walk completely unconsciously, right? They are absorbing everything around them unconsciously. Around 3, and you often see it in the way that they look at you, they suddenly like, oh, there's somebody there. Like they'll look at you in the eyes, like, they take awareness of their environment
It is
and
a
are
step up in
become.
consciousness, right?
It is. It's amazing. And it's amazing to see like that little click that goes on. And that is where they become that conscious learner where they know intrinsically what it is that they need to master to be the person that they want to be.
And I like that
Right.
you use
And
the word master because you see that in little kids. They'll do it over and over and over until they master it. But master is such a big word. And I think we can observe that, that elevates them in a different way. They're not a little kid just
mhm,
dinking around. They are mastering whatever that is, whether it's a crayon or a skill or putting pom-poms in egg cartons. Like they are mastering
exactly.
it. And I love that word associated with children.
Yeah. And to be able to master, they need to have repetition. So we cannot interrupt them, right? And that is the beauty also of the Montessori environment is that we give them the time that they need to master that skill. If they need to repeat that activity 50 times, then let them be. We're not going to be on a time watch like 20 minutes up. You need to go on to the next activity. Like if they want to take all morning to just master tying a bow, then that's what they need to do. And once they do master it, you see it. You see it in their eyes. They go, like there's this joy and this like, like poof, I did it. And then they move on to the next thing. Right? So it's really about trusting that we're all born with this desire to learn and to be curious and to master certain skills for our survival, for us to get ahead in life. And it's just beautiful when we trust in that process and we let go of trying to control them, and we really step away. And that's in the Montessori classroom is one of the moments because it's not like that the first days. Like it takes a while to get there. But there is a moment where you can sit on your stool and just observe and everybody is working and doing something and there's this little buzzing sound of busy little children just doing their thing and you feel like you're not necessary anymore because you've been able to guide them and orient them in where they need to be and they just move along. And the beauty also in the Montessori classroom is that it's always mixed age classrooms so that the younger children are seeing what is ahead by observing the older children and the older children get to even master their
Mentor.
skill even more because they're now showing a younger child how to do something.
Yeah, I just saw the cutest TikTok where she was showing her little sister her "You did a good crochet. Now do you see how that looped over there?" And they were doing it together and she goes, "You are doing so good." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, how are you even teaching a 2-year-old?" But she was so encouraging and I'm like, "Because someone has spoken that way to you." And it was just
Exactly.
really a beautiful little video of
Yeah.
and that they were
Yeah.
both feeling so accomplished, and she was just like the older one thought she had taught her, and the younger one, thought she had mastered it herself. It was such a sweet interaction, and I thought that is a Montessori kind of experience to see that.
Definitely. And what a beautiful activity to be crocheting instead of being numbed by an iPad, right? Like you're actually using these wonderful, 10 fingers that we've been given to do something purposeful and intelligent. So yeah, to go on, like for me, the first 6 years is really the foundation of kind of the basis for all of our more academic work that we will later have. And we focus a lot on practical life, which is all of the things that children are watching us do, whether it is cooking or woodworking or, gardening, whatever, but we give them all of these different activities for them to be independent, to be able to pour water in a glass and to serve themselves, to prepare their own food, to set the table, to clean up if there's a spill. They know how to clean it up. We're not their servants. We're not doing it for them. We're just showing them how to do it. And they're so proud to be able to do it for themselves. So, practical life, a lot of sensorial activity and learning. So, like I said, that's the basis for language and for everything. So, we do focus a lot on the education of the senses. So, music and the colors and the different touches and different feels of different cloths, and you match two pieces of silk to two pieces of wool, like different things that are just beautiful, smell, taste, all of that. And then mathematics. And this is all learned through the senses, through using kind of didactic material. So they're more games than anything else, right? But it's amazing because after 6 years, they know how to compute. They know how to do work in multiplications and divisions of large numbers, of fractions, all of this. And it has been this beautiful, joyful game because their brain is equipped to learn all of this without effort, through the love of learning and through their senses. And it's just beautiful. And it's because also we're observing that sensitive period. So when they're sensitive, we know to give them more, right? And then there's language, of course. And we do geography and botany and music. Then when a child leaves that first Montessori environment around 6, they are able to compute large numbers, know all of their multiplication tables, read, write, compose music. It's amazing, just amazing.
Gosh, and that's a lot. I mean, that's not pre-K. Like,
That
it's just
is,
not.
no, it's not. I mean, I worked here in San Diego in a school, and I remember a little girl that I had for the 3 years. So, because it's mixed age group, and she left and she went straight into first grade because, she was with me until like 5.5 or so. And she went to a pretty, high end, prestigious private school. And one day her mom came to pick up her younger sister, and she said, "Oh, Miss Jenny," they called me Miss Jenny, "Lily wants to talk to you." And I said, "Hello, how are you? How's," she says, "Oh, Miss Jenny, they don't know what division is here." Because this poor child was being told, "Oh, no, 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 you're too young for that." When she was already, loving math. Why stop her in her quest for wanting more? Um,
Wow.
but so
Just
yeah,
different
no, it was
systems.
fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
different
totally.
systems. Well, and can you cover, before we wrap up, how they can start to create a yes environment when they bring that baby home and moving towards toddler and older? Because having that sets up as such a good foundation for exploration.
Definitely. I will say that you have to realize that you have been living in a very adult centric environment, and you are going to welcome into your home a human that has very different needs than you do. And so it's really about being very aware of what their needs are going to be. So, we kind of talked about that. um, I look at it like, when you have a special guest that's coming to your home, maybe it's an elderly aunt who's using a walker, right? Well, you're going to move around some furniture to make sure that she can move around your place, right? So you're doing things temporarily to satisfy this person's needs. Your child is going to be evolving needs because you're observing. Your environment is going to change, especially those first 3 years. It's going to evolve to their needs. One of the things that I tell parents is sit on the floor and see it from their perspective. Even crawl around your home and see it from their perspective of what they're going to see and need and reach for and such. If you have a beautiful crystal bowl on a coffee table you don't want your child to touch, well, just move it, just temporarily. You'll be able to put it back in a few years. But be in a yes environment just for yourself, for your own nervous system, that you're not constantly on edge of, oh no, don't touch that. Oh, don't get into that. So yeah, to be observant of the environment, see it from their perspective, and keep everything down low. So that's why I mentioned the floor bed, right? Even I really like to have maybe family photos framed, but put the frames really down low so that when they're on the ground, they can see them. They're very attracted. That mirror, close to the ground is great for them. It's just, you're just creating an environment for somebody who's really down low, and they will get up to your height. They'll be taller than you one day, but for the moment it's happening at their level. So yeah.
Sounds like such a fun place to grow up, because I remember
Yes, it
not,
is.
don't touch, put that away. And it's, yeah,
No.
a yes environment is an amazing jump off point to learn how the world works.
And to be able to be independent, right? To be able to dress yourself and prepare food and so forth. So, as the child evolves, we have to set up different little areas and make sure that they're able to do things for themselves. And it's funny because for me, sometimes when I say independence, like I'm a big, in people think that I'm saying like, let them do, like, ignore them or whatever. It's not at all that. It's about self-worth. It's about being able to do things for yourself. That is really important. And we need to be setting that environment up for them to be able to do that.
That's how they succeed.
Exactly.
Can
Exactly.
you let our listeners know where they can find you?
Mostly my website, yourparentingmentor.com. I've been taking a little pause from social media, but otherwise it is Your Parenting Mentor. And I do have a YouTube channel that is Your Parenting Mentor, where I have a lot of videos of little activities that you can be showing your children at home with household utensils, like nothing fancy. And so, yes, on my website, there is a contact page. There we can set up a little discovery call and talk about your situation. I do a lot of in-home consultation, so physically here in San Diego, but I do also a lot of Zoom consultations where we'll maybe walk around your environment depending on your child's age or help you prepare if you are expecting. I'm also a birth doula and postpartum doula, so that I do include in my packages of the families that I work with. But yes, I do work virtually and in person. So I'd be more than happy to set those up.
Well worth a time for a call like that.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Thank you for being here. And I'm sure I'm going to have you back, because we just hit the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Montessori and all things
Yes,
you can be doing with
yes,
your
yes.
kids. All right. We will see everybody next week.
Thank you, Care.
Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.